The magic school test is about to begin. Students from every class were gathered on the same training field. The mission was simple. Activate the visible zone and form a protection shield. Romy, the teacher in rank 6, showed her level of power by creating a magic zone with a precision that nobody could imitate. She manipulated her magic in several ways. Defense, attack form, cross form, detach form. The dream of every student from the weaker classes is to one day reach her level. Then it was the newcomer's turn. Noble family, no training. Placed in class 7, the weakest class in the academy. All the students from the other classes had heard the rumors that he couldn't use any magic at all. When he stepped to the center and pulled off the defense form, everyone figured it was just luck. But when he did the attack form and the cross form, everyone was stunned because only students from the top classes can do that. But then he pulled a surprise. He tried to pull off a form that only Sescla students can do. And everyone around him couldn't believe he was actually attempting the zone of deviate form. But the magic failed before taking shape, and everyone burst out laughing, whispering that a commoner would never pull off something that took years to NGT. And GT. What did you say? And GT. And GT. The boy stood still for a few seconds and then tried again. This time, the energy grew so fast that it exploded in a way nobody expected. On the first day of training, the boy formed a shield with 144 faces, a structure that advanced students spent months trying to create. Everyone started wondering who this boy was and if he was really a commoner. But what they didn't know is that he wasn't born into a commoner family. He had just been raised as one because when he was still a baby, he was abandoned in a barn where a man found him and raised him as his own son. That child grew up with the name Arian Sharon, and he had only one dream, to learn magic. His father, Arian Vincent, one day took him for the first time to the city of Toria Creus. While his father handled business, Shireen went to a bookstore to try reading a magic book, but the shopkeeper threw him out the moment she realized he was a commoner. Everywhere he went, he was chased down and kicked out of the city. Pretty quickly, though, he managed to escape and hide from the authorities. Sharon came out of hiding to grab a shoe that had fallen off when he heard a word that caught his attention. Magic. He pressed his ear against the wall and listened to a magic lesson happening on the other side. When the boy wondered if he would ever become a mage, the old man answered inside his mind that if he wants it, he can do it. The boy was in shock, not understanding how the mage had sensed him. In that moment, the boy made the decision that would change his life forever. When he reached the top of the wall, Shireen froze because it was the first time he had ever seen a magic academy and a mage. When the mage called everyone class, he didn't think twice. He just jumped over the wall and walked in with the other students. This mage is Mary Alphys, director of a magic school and a 4th rank mage. The MC begged him to show some magic since he had never seen any. Alphys was moved and put on a demonstration. He lifted all the students into the air with wind magic. Sharon was living a dream. When Shireen started falling, he was shaking so hard with fear that everyone burst out laughing. But he didn't care because he had just experienced something he never imagined possible. But that wasn't enough. Now the MC wants to learn how to cast magic. The old man explains that it's complicated, but Shireen kept pushing until a demonstration happened. A student performed the spirit zone and asked how many stones he had in his closed hand. The girl answered 6, and the MC saw that she was right. NGT, what was that? The old man explains that you need to concentrate as hard as possible until your mind expands and you can feel everything around you as if it were part of yourself. Sharon tried it right then and there. After focusing for a while, he opens his eyes and says he only heard sounds. The old man says that was expected and walked away thinking the boy had failed, but Shireen knew he had pulled it off. On his way back to his father, he bumps into a group of bullies. Just when he was about to get beat up, a girl appears like an angel sent from heaven to save him. But what he didn't expect is that this girl was worse than those bullies and left him getting beaten up anyway. After being used as a punching bag, this little devil of a girl walked up to him and said she was going to use him as a slave. While everyone was laughing, the MC was terrified. Hijete. No. God, please no. No. And GT. IT was in that moment that everything in his mind and everything around him started to freeze as if it had come alive. Shireen entered the spirit zone by accident, and suddenly the memory of the teacher's demonstration replayed inside his head. When he snapped back to reality, he unleashed an absurd burst of wind that sent everyone flying so high that when they hit the ground, they broke every bone on impact. Amy was shocked and demanded to know who he was. When the crowd started closing in, she took off flying to avoid being exposed. Shireen ran, calling for his father, understanding for the first time how cruel the world really was. Now we move to the top-ranked noble family, Carmies, where Amy arrives home. She tells her father that a boy beat them. He barely reacts, saying she was only hurt because she probably skipped class again. Amy shrugs it off. She says she already learned everything they teach, and now she's bored. Her father asks when she plans to grow up because, genius or not, she's still too careless. Amy heads upstairs in a foul mood, but is warning that one day someone will stab her in the back stays with her. After a moment, she turns and asks if he knows anyone at the magic school. If he does, she wants an introduction. Winter comes, and we return to our hero's home. His father asks where he is, and his mother says their son went into the woods to cut trees. That shocks him. It's still snowing hard, so his father goes into the forest to find him. As he walks, he remembers the spring day he first brought Chirin into these woods. Back then, he nearly lost him, and even then, he felt something strange was going on. Now, our hero stands before a tree, axe in hand. It looks like he's just chopping wood, but he's really trying to repeat the magic he used that day, the power he could only bring out by accident. He can't look into the past with clairvoyance because he knows too little about magic, but he can still enter the spirit zone. In that state, he can sense everything around him. Touch, shape, smell. One glance at a tree tells him almost everything about it. Then he notices a strange glow inside it, but he doesn't know what it means. Still, he swings at that glowing point. He was just following the feeling, but the moment the axe landed, he understood. He could drop a tree in one strike. That had to be magic. His father, watching from behind another tree, had no idea what he had just seen. To him, it was like a bolt of lightning. Our hero thought he'd only gotten lucky, like that earlier day when he somehow landed the perfect hit. But then he understood it wasn't luck at all. It was about finding the exact point. So he kept practicing day after day. He repeated it again and again, waiting for that moment to come back. 3 years pass, and by fall, our hero has grown up. Now he knows you don't truly see with your eyes. You feel he can cut down a tree with one clean blow. After meditating, he almost forgets to go home. Even though 5 hours have passed, everything around him makes him feel like he's become part of nature. He senses the grove, the worms moving, the roots drinking water. He can hear it all so deeply that 5 hours vanish. Then he remembers the old man's words. If he could do this, he would surely see another world. On that thought, he heads home. Outside the house, he finds a carriage and white horses, so he guesses guests have arrived. Inside, he sees his parents with the butler and chief servant of the Ogent family. The man introduces himself as Tom. Our hero can't understand why a noble servant is here. Tom starts checking him at once and asks several questions like whether he can read and how old he is. After that, Tom says he's a very promising case, especially because he can read. That's unusual for a lumberjack's son, and he's also very polite. So, Tom asks if he'd like to work for the family. Our hero is about to refuse, but Tom quickly explains they need someone in the library, mainly to make sure no books are taken out. The job will last 2 years. Porters handle the heavy lifting while our hero and the butler sort the books. Our hero is drawn in right away. The library could hold the high knowledge a future magician needs, but this work must stay secret between him and his family. No book can leave the room, and no one can even know one was removed. If that happens, he and his family will die. He finally understands his parents' faces. The pay is good, but the job puts all their lives at risk. Tom says money like this is nearly impossible to earn through normal labor. So he tells Vincent to send his son somewhere better. But Vincent says he listened because he wants his son to have a chance at his dreams. Tom laughs, asking if he really believes that. More likely, he just wants the money. Vincent pushes back. Tom can see the boy reads well, but still doesn't believe he can truly handle the work. Then he asks Vincent why he kept lying to his son if he really wanted to help him. That brings up the father's memories. He remembers his wife teaching their son a few words as a game. By 6, the boy could already read. He even looked like an aristocrat. But what stood out most was his sharp mind. Vincent often wondered if noble blood ran through him. He kept thinking that if the boy had been born to a noble house, he might have gone far. But they were poor, and Vincent was just a lumberjack. Once the boy started following the same hard path as him, Vincent became afraid. He'd raised him to live the life of a woodcutter. Then Vincent drops to his knees before the butler and begs him to hire his son, saying the boy is smart and can read. Vincent says he isn't asking for a single coin. He just wants his son taken from this life, even though he doesn't know what will happen next. Tom fixes his hat and says that since no one else will offer such a place, there isn't much to discuss. Then our hero speaks up and says he'll do it. Tom is stunned, and Chiron's father immediately objects. Tom asks if he's serious and reminds him again. If even one rumor spreads, he and his family will lose their heads. Our hero says that's fine. He wants this himself, and he won't blame anyone if things go wrong. Tom smiles, clearly not expecting that from a commoner. He says he'll return in 1 week, and until then, the boy can still change his mind, but once he enters the estate, he won't be allowed to leave until the job is done. Vincent shouts, asking why he agreed. He thought nobles only wanted people to throw away. Blaming himself, he says he'll take responsibility and refuse for him. Instead, our hero starts crying and smiling because to him, this is the greatest gift his father could have given. He hugs his father. The two of them cry together, though Vincent's tears come from fear, not joy. Soon, his father says he'll stay and protect their mother. That's his duty as head of the family. He tells his son to come back as soon as he can because they still need him. At that moment, Vincent wonders if he's finally done something right as a father. A week later, a carriage arrives to take our hero away. At the same time, his father signs the contract, handing him over for the job. The moment he signs, they snatch the paper away and rush our hero into the carriage. The door shuts, and the coachman starts talking with his sharp awareness. Our hero can still sense his parents standing there crying. He reaches out toward them, but he knows he can't waver now. This is his one chance, and it could save him or destroy him. He has no idea whether he can survive 2 years among people with that much power. Then we learn about the kingdom of Tormia, where the Ogent family stands at the top. A warrior house that has produced royal swordsmen since ancient times. The former family head is a general and a third-rank state swordsman. The current head Ogent bishop is 4th rank. Put simply, this family runs the city. On the way, the coachman pointed out the Ogent estate and its famous main road. Once our hero stepped out, he was asked if he was scared. People called this family monsters. As he followed the path inside, it finally started to feel real. He was standing before the Ogent family, 2nd-rank nobles. This area held the butler's workspaces, their living quarters, and the room where our hero would stay. Then the butler, we already know, met him and started showing him around. The first stop was the library. Our hero could barely look away. The butler explained that every book here would eventually be moved to the sacred library. Until then, our hero's job was to sort them. Each week, he'd get a list, find those books, and gather them in one place. He would work from 9 to 6 o'clock, but even after hours, he wasn't allowed to leave the estate without permission. After handing him a form, the butler said the head butler would explain the house rules and asked if he had any questions. After hearing everything Timon had arranged, our hero knew this chance was worth risking his life for. He only had one question. When could he begin? The answer was obvious. Tomorrow. By the next day, our hero was already in a butler uniform, learning that the books had to be sorted by author. The sorting standards had to stay consistent, too. That mattered because subjects could overlap. A book on a history of swordsmanship, for example, could be judged in different ways. One person might file it under advanced sword arts, while another might place it somewhere more general. While building the system, our hero realized that all knowledge connects. The key link was history. It's the line that ties everything together. In that way, history becomes the backbone of knowledge. If you understand history well, learning every other field gets easier. Out of 10,000 books, about 850 were about history. To chase his dream of becoming a magician, our hero decided he had to read them all within 2 years. Then he snapped out of his thoughts and noticed the deputy head butler might be coming. Since his reading hadn't been officially allowed, he didn't want to be caught. Tamarin simply remarked that our hero was hardworking and asked if he was staying late again. Taking it seriously, our hero stood at once and admitted he was. There was no praise. Tamarin warned him not to let his condition get worse, because he alone would bear the blame. Then our hero noticed Tamarin step closer. He wondered if the man had seen what he was reading. Instead, Tamarin only brushed the dust off his clothes and reminded him that this library reflected the family, so he needed to keep himself neat. If he looked sloppy, it could stain the Ogin family's image. He was also told to do something about his long hair. Our hero shook the whole time, but he gave nothing away. He understood the warning clearly. In this place, he had to watch himself for the next 2 years. He needed to be more careful so no one would have reasons to complain. He even thought about tying his hair back like his father. Still, a bigger problem remained. He could barely understand the book about the 3 empires and 7 kingdoms. Just learning Tormia alone was hard enough. So, how was he supposed to grasp all of that? Did he need to memorize everything? Then he realized memorizing wasn't the goal. He needed to truly understand each line so he could use that knowledge anytime. One day, he fell asleep over his books. And when Tamarin came by, he noticed the mess around him. He also spotted the book our hero had struggled with for half a month. With a faint smile, Tamarin asked the sleeping boy if he really thought he could succeed. If our hero had actually mastered those books, Tamarin would have stopped him from reading them after work. But seeing this, he relaxed. Our hero just looked like a fool with oversized dreams. Even so, life in the Ogent library went on, and 3 months slipped by. Our hero kept at it, and sorting books slowly became easier, even enjoyable. He learned more about butler duties and kept managing the book records. He even started speaking with the other butlers, including the ones who failed to return books. That taught him something harsh. When books went missing, it was the butlers and servants who suffered for it. What shocked him most was that the nobles barely cared about the library at all. Even so, the place still ran, and he realized that only happened because the commoners supported it with real effort. Those same commoners risked their lives over things the nobles wouldn't even remember. So, our hero decided he had to become cold and make no mistakes. It seemed safer to live as if he were invisible. Right then, a black-haired boy burst into the library, yelling that he wouldn't die just because he skipped training for one day. From what he knew, our hero recognized him as the youngest son of the Ogent family. The shouting made it clear he had run away from training, which was apparently a serious problem. He rushed up and told our hero to say he hadn't seen him. A bearded old man charged in after him, shouting for his student. He asked whether a blue-haired boy, tiny as a peanut, had run in there. That description caught our hero off guard, but he acted clueless and asked who the old man was. The man answered in a rough voice that he was the sword master, the kind who could split that peanut in one strike. Then he told our hero to stop playing around and say where the boy was. Our hero immediately gave him up, saying the youngest son was hiding under the bookcase. The boy was furious. The master grabbed him by the shirt and dragged him out at once, clearly fed up with the brat skipping training. He meant to beat some sense into him. Dragging the boy away, the master showed power on par with the family head. So, our hero had no choice but to stay out of it. Rumor said that once the master caught someone, they might vanish for a month. As for our hero, his reading speed kept improving. The first book had taken him 20 days, but once he learned how to truly understand them, he finished 82 history books in 4 months. Just as he expected, the hardest part was only the beginning. After that, the books stopped feeling completely foreign. Once he built a solid base, the rest became much easier. After a couple hundred books, the remaining 650 no longer seemed impossible. And the more he read about magicians and history, the more sure he became. A scientist studies theories, but a magician turns theory into reality. In that sense, magicians and scientists stand on equal ground. The reason not every scholar becomes a magician is simple. They can't enter the spirit zone. So, if our hero could connect his knowledge to that spirit realm, that would be the real beginning. That thought filled him with hope. Maybe he really could become a magician. Then the library doors opened and the youngest son stormed in, still furious with him. He said he had endured that hell for one reason only, to kill our hero. Our hero was stunned by how stubborn he was. Still, he asked if this was really about what happened before. The blue-haired boy didn't hesitate. Of course it was. Did our hero know how much he had suffered? He'd climbed up and down a cliff over and over, and when his hands gave out and he thought he would die. The only thing that kept him going was his need for revenge. At that point, our hero could tell the younger son's anger was completely real, and it was honestly scary. The boy asked if he really thought this was just because a little pain. No, he was furious because he had trusted our hero with a favor, and our hero sold him out. He said he had never seen such a coward. Pinned under that pressure, our hero thought about how people with power always shape the rules to suit themselves. But all he said out loud was, "What can I do to make up for it?" The boy only smiled and said an apology wouldn't be enough, then told him to follow. They went to the training yard where sword practice was held. The younger son said he'd teach himself. Our hero figured he was about to get beaten badly. Still, he decided to take it. Better that than dying after wasting the chance his parents risked everything to give him. A sword was tossed to him, and the younger son declared a duel. Now he'd make him pay for what he'd done. Our hero still didn't get why he kept calling him coward. But the younger son was furious because our hero had let the master punish him. To him, our hero had turned his back on someone who needed help. Then his expression changed, and he said that no matter how his family treated him, he wouldn't be looked down on by anyone, not even our hero. He told him to attack first, and said he'd only start after taking 3 hits. Our hero knew he belonged to the Ojanith clan, and even a wooden sword could still break bones. If that happened, how was he supposed to survive? So, he decided to use everything he had learned. He only had 3 chances. His first strike failed. The younger son blocked it. Our hero couldn't even tell how. The second strike also failed, and the younger son mocked him, asking if he even knew how to hold a sword. But our hero ignored the insult and just counted his remaining blows. 1 left. He entered the spirit zone and started reading his opponent. The younger son noticed something was off. He moved to attack. Then his sword suddenly snapped. He stared in shock. Our hero realized he had pulled it off. The first strike let him feel the sword. The second helped him read the timing, and the third did exactly what he planned. The The thunder strike he'd practiced for 3 years finally paid off. The younger son stared at him, unable to believe he could do that. Our hero said it wasn't some grand art. It was a thunderbolt. He explained that his father worked in the mountains, and he used to help cut trees. Since he lacked strength, he made up for it with technique. Among lumberjacks, they called it thunderbolt. The younger son couldn't believe someone learned that just by chopping wood. After training with a sword for 15 years, he knew that kind of technique shouldn't be possible that way. Then a memory came back to him. Once someone else had done the same thing at just 12 years old. Back then, they had seen the true talent of their family line and realized the second master was far beyond others his age. He had inherited all of his father's genius, and everyone celebrated him. But Ri could never catch up to his brother, and that drove him crazy. Now, as he looked at our hero, he saw his brother in him. His mood turned sharp, and our hero had no idea what he'd done wrong. Then the younger son told him to shut up, pulled out an iron sword, and threw it over. He said the match wasn't over just because the wooden weapon broke. If our hero could destroy a sword like that, then he should be fought at his real level. They'd settle the winner in 1 month with real swords. Our hero's hands shook as he held it. This time he could really die. He begged the young master to rethink it, saying he hadn't really learned anything, but the boy wouldn't budge. That was exactly why he was giving him a month. If he was skilled enough to master that technique, then he could figure out the rest. One more thing, he wasn't allowed to run because the younger son had to beat himself. Back at his books, our hero felt miserable after learning something important about the Ajanath family. The family head had black hair, and so did the eldest son. That eldest son was a 6th-rank state swordsman. The eldest daughter had blue hair and great talent too, but she chose music and became a pianist in the kingdom. The second son, Rai, also had black hair and was called a genius. So unlike his top-ranked brothers, Ri was seen as lacking. Even with a personal mentor, everyone knew it. And that made our hero feel even worse. He had already suffered enough beatings. And now he had gone and hit the pride of someone who'd spent his whole life being compared to his brothers. He thought if this had been about books, he wouldn't be facing death. Still, there was no time to sulk. He had to think, especially if he still wanted to become a mage. He'd grown up in the mountains, so he trusted his endurance. If he could at least learn some way to defend himself, he might survive. So, he decided to do everything he could. At the same time, Rai kept training and finished his 100th lap. His coach was impressed. The time was even better than before. He asked if something had happened to make him work this hard. Ri snapped back, asking if this even counted as training. He was still standing, so he wanted something harsher. The old man could tell something was wrong. At first, he guessed it was about RYY's older brother. But whatever the reason, he only said one thing. If Ri died, it wouldn't be his fault. What he brought out was a diagram Ri had studied for a long time. It explained the spirit zone used by magicians. But this other diagram belonged to swordsmen. Everyone understands their own body, yet a scheme is like the body you push to its limit. It said masters of it can use every part of themselves perfectly, the complete opposite of a spirit zone. Should he try it? First, he decided to focus on feeling his own body. Still, he thought training in a scheme, the exact opposite of the spirit zone, might not work for him. He even remembered the girl he met 3 years ago. She seemed to use a scheme, too, which was shocking at her age. Even so, our hero decided to practice sword moves with the spirit zone as his base. He began with cuts from 8 directions. At the same time, Rai trained in a rage because he still didn't have a scheme and his teacher watched an alarm, worried about him. Finally, he stopped RYY's sword and said training was over for the day. Then he asked what was going on, joking that Ri looked like he wanted to die by his hand. When asked what he knew, Ri said he didn't know what he was good at, only what he was bad at. His teacher replied that this was why he wasn't a genius. Ri was clearly offended, saying he knew exactly what geniuses were and what they excelled at. A genius moves without doubt, putting all their effort into what they do best. But what people like Ri really fear is the hard work needed to face what doesn't come naturally. The burning urge to quit what they can't do. That, the teacher said, is the natural enemy of genius. Ri smiled, surprised by the idea. He admitted it was the best comfort anyone had given him, but he still wasn't giving up. If he couldn't get that power at first, then he'd win through effort. Swordsmanship, in the end, is the art of killing with movement. And because of that, it depends just as much on reading how a living enemy will act. So our hero trained by imagining an opponent. It looked like an enemy could strike in all kinds of ways, but most attacks really came from just 8 directions. That meant he only had to master cutting and blocking from those 8 angles. And he spent the whole month doing exactly that. He practiced them day after day. As soon as he finished one form, he moved right into the next, step by step. Again and again, he repeated the motions until one moment he let go of the sword and understood something. Swordsmen choose a path of endless repetition, and in its own way, the sword is just as limitless as magic. Thinking about what was coming, our hero quietly asked for forgiveness because he likely wouldn't make it home alive. Even so, he had no regrets. Standing between life and death, he had still discovered an amazing new world. Soon, they arrived at the dimly lit Colosseum. Ree was already there, waiting to start. He only asked our hero one thing. Was he ready? What bothered Ree most was how much our hero had changed in just 1 month. His whole presence was different. Ree had to admit that last time our hero barely knew how to hold a sword. And now he stood there calm, gripping a real blade before a fight to the death. Ryan got even more worked up and wondered if our hero had the same talent as his genius brother. But he pushed that thought aside and attacked. Sure, there was no way he could lose. Watching Ryan come in, our hero knew right away the gap between them was real. Even so, he could sense something most people couldn't. He could see the path of the sword itself. Ryan was shocked that his opponent could read his blade at all, and even more shocked that he wasn't scared. Still, our hero kept telling himself that even if he couldn't erase his fear of death, that fear came from a future that hadn't happened yet. If you stop thinking about the next moment, anyone can leap off a cliff. This wasn't just about being ready to die. Our hero was forcing all the fear and rage inside him under control. Ryan's eyes lit up. He wasn't afraid of death either, and he charged straight in. Our hero saw it coming and blocked the strike from the right. Ryan expected that much, but he believed some walls couldn't be beaten with tricks alone. So, he pressed harder, swinging again and again with brutal speed and power. Our hero realized his synesthesia let him read the sword, but not fast enough for this. Then Ryan landed a hit on our hero's chest, and blood spread across his clothes. A strange light flashed in his eyes because he knew the next strike was already coming. He flipped away to dodge it and barely made it. Our hero couldn't figure out what he was doing wrong, while Ryan started to smell victory. Seeing our hero so lost, he asked if he finally understood how weak he was. Ogin's sword style was made for training with a great sword, so there was no way he could handle Ryan's heavy blows. Ryan had trained every gift he had, even to the point of breaking his bones, just to gain enough power to tear our hero apart. But to our hero, the fight only felt stranger. If that last slash had really been meant to finish him, Ryan should have followed through from below and cut into his side. Instead, his swings were too wide. That made our hero realize Ryan wasn't good at everything and didn't understand the sword as deeply as he thought. Ryan relied on techniques, but lacked the insight to use them well. Once our hero saw that, he knew Ryan's real combat level was lower than it looked. So, our hero rushed forward again, now knowing he had to change tactics. This time, he took the offensive. Ryan never saw that coming. He couldn't believe our hero was forcing his way toward him. Without noticing it, Ryan had backed him into a corner. Yet, simple attacks were suddenly hard to block. Our hero noticed Ryan's stamina was almost gone, so he kept a steady rhythm and saved his own strength. Ryan snapped. In front of him stood what felt like another copy of his genius brother, and old memories came rushing back. He remembered that twisted smirk like he was being told not even to look up at someone so far above him. Furious, Ryan shouted that he would become the greatest swordsman in the world. Then he lunged again, and our hero couldn't tell what he was doing. Was he not thinking at all? But when he looked closer, Ryan's blade had become unreadable, too fast, and too wild to follow. Now there were countless possible attacks in front of him. The next strike came so suddenly our hero only caught it at the last instant. The impact was so hard that a sword flew from someone's hand. But it wasn't our hero's sword. It was Ryan's, and he couldn't believe it. At the very last moment, our hero changed his grip and knocked the blow away. Ryan stared in shock with only one thought left. What exactly is this guy? Our hero was just as stunned. He could hardly believe he'd won such a brutal fight. But winning brought a new problem. This was still a duel with an aristocrat. And after hurting Ryan's pride again, anything could happen. Our hero kept his sword pointed at Ryan, while Ryan hit his own head and muttered that he'd lost again. Then he told our hero to kill him. He wouldn't complain. Our hero asked if he was serious. When Ryan tried to speak, our hero cut him off and asked if he really thought he'd survive after killing someone of Ryan's status. Ryan started to say they had both risked their lives, but our hero shouted back that Ryan chose that risk. He was only trying to survive, and this whole duel had been stupid from the start. Somehow the blame had been pushed onto our hero from the beginning just because he didn't want to train. Ryan asked if our hero was saying he had betrayed him instead of showing respect. Our hero had a sharp answer. He said Ryan should think about the position he'd put him in, caught between the youngest son and the fencing teacher. Any honorable man would have never forced a butler into that. He drove it home by asking if Ryan had ever stopped to think how proudly he had stood against his own teacher. Only then did Ryan see how it looked from the outside and realized he had acted like a complete jerk. Right after that, our hero collapsed from pure exhaustion, nearly dead on his feet. Ryan just stared, confused. Weren't fighters supposed to trade respectful words after a duel? Instead of the cold warrior he just faced, he now saw a weak boy who could barely stand. Ryan still believed he was a genius, but unlike his brother, he hadn't mocked him. He had faced him heat-in with everything he had. After a pause, Ryan finally asked his name. Our hero wiped away sweat and said his name was Chiron. Ryan introduced himself too. Then Ryan held out his hand and asked if they could be friends. Back in the library, the head butler, Unvo, told our hero he had sorted over 7,000 out of 10,000 books. He also praised him for doing so well in his first year. A full year had passed since our hero started working in the Great Ogun Library. With fewer books left to sort, his speed had gone up too. Now he only had 200 books left out of his goal of 850, and since he could read more than 3 a day, the knowledge he wanted was finally close. He had also kept training with the sword and learned more about the meaning of fear. Because of that, he felt his mental strength had grown. He truly believed he could have died that day. It was hard at first, but by refusing to quit, he kept moving toward his goal. Another big change was Ryan becoming his friend and hanging around the library. He stared at the shelves in shock, wondering if his family really owned all these books and if they had actually read them. To our hero, this place was a treasure, but having a real friend mattered just as much. While working, he told Ryan that of course the library was full of use since Gale and the other young master came by often. Ryan thought being smart was cool, and after getting closer to him, our hero realized that despite his huge size, Ryan was gentle and sweet. It fit him as the younger son. But when Ryan started tossing books around, our hero turned pale. If even one got damaged, he felt like he was dead. Ryan tried to calm him down. He couldn't understand how a book could matter more than a person's life, and said even if our hero burned the whole library, he'd protect him. Our hero just held his head. Ryan would be easier to like if he kept quiet, but he never changed. So, our hero told him he could only feel safe if Ryan stayed still, then asked about his training. Ryan shrugged and said it was just basic practice. So, he told his teacher he'd train in the library for a while. Our hero asked what Ryan was waiting for. He was supposed to be training. Instead, Ryan whined that he was just a bored kid. Our hero had already noticed how lazy his friend was getting, and once Ryan started complaining, he never stopped. Still, 10 minutes later, our hero got him to sit down and study. If Ryan came here to learn, then he had to actually learn. Clearly annoyed, Ryan asked if Shuran really needed to read this many books just to become a mage. Our hero said yes. He was still behind since he never had the chance to study before coming to the library. Now he had read over 600 history books and knew almost everything in them. Ryan was stunned. He couldn't understand how our hero read so fast. They were the same age, but Shireen felt way more grown up. Ryan grabbed a book and said he'd read enough already. Just from the preface, it asked who would win, a magician or a warrior. The author had spent his life chasing that answer, but the book immediately wandered off in a talk about the shining mountains of Artisan. Then it mentioned a man-eating tree living 6,000 up in those mountains. Ryan gave up right there, saying none of this was helping. Our hero snapped and asked why he stopped. He tried to make Ryan keep reading, but Ryan complained the book didn't even have sword pictures. Our hero insisted he couldn't judge it after one page and pushed him to keep going. Ryan still didn't care. To him, no sane person would even set up a fight like that. Then Ryan's older brother walked in and casually said the swordsman would obviously win. Our hero quickly bowed to greet the young master while Ryan frowned and asked how he knew that. Our hero froze, wondering if his brother had heard everything. They all tensed up because if a servant was caught speaking too freely with a noble son, punishment could follow. Ryan pressed him anyway, asking why he sounded so certain. Was it just because he was a swordsman, too? Ryan said certain was too strong, but anyone could see it from the way archers and mages stood on the continent. Ryan kept arguing. If they were talking about a real duel, did rank on a battlefield matter at all? Ignoring his brother's attitude, Ryan turned to our hero and asked what he thought. That caught our hero completely off guard. He barely understood what was being asked, and with so much running through his head, it was even harder to answer. Still, he knew he just had to respond clearly. He said that if a swordsman and a magician were evenly matched, beating a mage in a state of mind would be very hard. But if the swordsman could strike with full power before the spell was finished, things might change. Ryan cut in with a smug grin and said he was wrong. The swordsman would win. No question. Our hero was shocked, but Ryan already understood his brother was pushing the same idea. Ever since childhood, Ryan's brother loved stepping on whatever mattered to someone he disliked. He went on saying, "Our hero liked history, so he must have heard of the armor of the 5 gods." Our hero stayed quiet and Ryan asked if that was the artifact that breaks a mage's state of mind. Our hero pictured it at once. A mage's natural gift is that state of mind, and fighting one in it is like trying to battle sharks in the deep sea. But if something could remove the water, the sharks would lose their edge. Anti-magic did that to mages. If the state of mind couldn't reach that armor, then magic couldn't either. How can any mage fight someone wearing such an artifact? Still, anti-magic was mostly theory since it was made from dragon heart mana and cost a fortune. Its unstable nature made it even harder to perfect. Even Yakra, master of the oscillation equation, only brought the armor of the 5 gods to 65% of its full power. Each piece cost as much as a kingdom's yearly budget. Ryan got annoyed. If it was that impossible to get, then how was the swordsman supposed to be stronger? His brother said the funny part was that mages created anti-magic in the first place. Ryan couldn't understand why they would make something like that. With a proud smirk, Ryan explained it was simple. There was huge demand, and selling it made mages rich, so no one needed to buy some priceless legendary armor. He looked around and asked if they understood now. In his view, mages were just pathetic people selling their own kind's weakness for money. Ryan was about to argue, but our hero lit up and said that was exactly what made magicians great. Ryan stared at him and asked what he just said. Our hero didn't back down. Anti-magic, he explained, was made by mages to limit magic in places where it wasn't allowed. It was also used well as protection in magic schools. Yes, it could be turned against mages, but that didn't lower its worth. It was still a gift of knowledge made for the good of everyone. So, from that alone, he said, you couldn't claim a swordsman was stronger than a wizard. Ryan's brother was irritated, especially because his little brother was still laughing. He spun around and said ideals and reality were different. In real combat, a magician still couldn't beat a swordsman. He said it only because he refused to lose. And after he left, Ryan and our hero burst out laughing. Our hero joked that during the whole talk, he honestly thought he might die. Ryan was thrilled. Chiron had made his brother look worse than anyone ever had. He laughed and said, if our hero's tongue were a blade, he'd be the best swordsman alive. For Ryan, the whole thing felt refreshing. Maybe ideas and reality were different, like his brother said, but a curious mind keeps going even when it has to test its own weak spots. Could that kind of intelligence really exist to bring peace to the world? 6 months passed after that. Then the head butler said the work had finished much faster than expected. The library had been sorted 6 months ahead of schedule, and even books ignored for 20 years were now perfectly organized. Another butler asked if Tamurin regretted letting such a good worker go. Maybe they could have found some excuse to extend his contract, but Tamurin brushed that off as nonsense. Even so, he thought about our hero sitting in the library and realized it's easy to close a book, but much harder after reading hundreds of pages. Our hero's dream had finally come true, but he barely had time to enjoy it. Ryan burst in and asked if he was done and ready to leave. Then he saw the answer for himself. Our hero had truly finished every book. Our hero said there was nothing left to read. Ryan could hardly believe it. He thought nobody on Earth could shock him anymore. Yet our hero still did. Ryan rushed over and hugged him in excitement, even if it made our hero awkward. Still, both of them were happy, and our hero suggested they finally go play together. Ryan had hidden their friendship for a long time, and that had bothered him. Hearing our hero say it out loud meant a lot. Our hero hadn't realized Ryan cared that much, and he felt sorry too. Most of their time together had been in the library, so he was really curious about how Ryan lived outside it. Ryan excitedly said he could show him everything now, especially since the whole family was away today. When our hero stepped outside, he was intimidated by the huge mansion and couldn't believe he was really allowed to go in through the main gate. Ryan told him not to worry. His family wouldn't be back until evening. Inside, the mansion was so quiet it felt empty, and even one room seemed as big as his whole house. He still had a hard time believing Ryan came from a family this rich. Ryan's room was at the end of the hall, and it was the smallest one there, more like a plain little training room than a noble's bedroom. The two spent their last bit of free time playing cards together. Ryan hated losing and started to wonder if our hero was using his special state of mind to cheat. But our hero explained it was simpler than that. Ryan always gave himself away. Whenever he drew an ace, he pushed the card forward a little, and his face made it obvious when he had a pair. When Ryan asked how he noticed so much, our hero said, observation works best when you don't lock onto one thing. If you watch the whole person instead of one move, you can guess what comes next. Ryan's head felt ready to burst from all that information and from losing again. He wondered if awakening his own scheme would help. Our hero encouraged him since that was what helped him enter his own state of mind. Still, Ryan kept bouncing between understanding everything and understanding nothing. Then our hero spotted a novel by the window. He wanted to read it, especially after spending so long stuck with plain history books. But when he turned back, Ryan was already asleep at the table. He must have been exhausted. Our hero checked the time and wondered when the family would return. Then he heard a piano. After a moment, he remembered there was only one person in the house who could be playing. It was the court pianist, Rena Ogent, Ryan's older sister. She turned and asked what he thought of the sonata. He froze, hoping she hadn't noticed him. Once he stepped in, she asked if he was new, and he explained he'd been sorting books in the library for a year. From her reaction, she already knew him by rumor and had heard he was smart for his age. Then she asked if he had ever played piano before. Our hero stayed cautious. A real expert was in front of him, and Ryan had called his sister the most dangerous person on the estate. Then she invited him over to sit beside her so she could teach him. He could barely believe she really meant next to her at the piano. She told him it was fine. No one would dare scold him if she gave permission. Seeing how firm she was, he knew he couldn't politely refuse. And honestly, when else would he ever get a chance to sit at a piano? She started teaching him the notes and how they worked. She showed him which keys to press and in what order, and he listened closely. He enjoyed it so much that she even praised him. After a while, he asked if he could try. She reassured him that everyone starts out badly. But the second he touched the keys, she realized his hand position was completely wrong. Even so, he played with total confidence. She almost stopped him, thinking he was doing everything incorrectly. Then she hesitated because despite all that, the melody sounded nearly right, like he was copying her whole performance by ear. Our hero was using his zone, and with each note, he adjusted and got better. She couldn't make sense of it. This wasn't normal practice at all. Somehow, he grasped the whole idea almost instantly. She even started wondering why someone like him was working as a butler in the first place. Noticing the way she looked at him, our hero stopped at once. He thought he'd gone too far. Right then, a voice behind him yelled for her to stop playing. The speaker was annoyed. He had only just managed to fall asleep, and she started playing the moment she got back. Our hero turned and saw his friend Chiron, who immediately asked what he was doing there. His sister looked surprised that they knew each other. Our hero wanted to deny it or at least avoid the topic. But Ryan cut in and openly called him his friend. Our hero had tried to keep that hidden, yet Ryan brushed it off and said even if his sister was a wicked witch, she wouldn't care about something like that. Our hero couldn't understand how she could not care. Then she stepped in and calmly said there was nothing wrong with it. If her brother called him a friend, then that was enough for her. She added that her brother might be pitiful, but he takes responsibility for his words. Then she asked our hero what he had been thinking about while playing. Her question caught him completely off guard. Everything he thought he understood about nobles for the last 16 years was falling apart. She didn't mind her brother being friends with a peasant, and that shocked him so much that he asked Ryan why he had called her nasty, which when she seemed kind and beautiful. Ryan instantly broke into a cold sweat and looked like he was staring at a monster ready to swallow someone whole. Still smiling sweetly, the older sister said her little brother was a bit hopeless, so she was glad he had a friend like our hero. Ryan then nervously asked why she didn't just take him into the family, since he was so cute. She stared at him, surprised he was acting close enough to offer her away like that. Ryan quickly tried to backtrack and act like our hero was the one in danger, not her. Too late, she grabbed him by the neck and slammed him to the floor for speaking that way to a lady. Our hero just stood there stunned, because every idea he had about noble behavior was getting wrecked. After getting beaten down, Ryan asked why she was home so soon. She asked if he knew Paradise was being certified today. She had come to pick him up, and they were leaving tomorrow. Their grandfather would arrive later to see him, too. Ryan sagged at the news and muttered that it really was time for that certification. Our hero didn't understand it yet, but he could see how upset his friend was. The certification was an official standard for archers and mages, recognized not just in the kingdom, but across the whole continent. Every year, around 1,000 people took the test, but only about 20 passed. There were also unofficial licenses. For example, graduating from a kingdom-approved school like the Academy of Magical Theists could make someone an uncertified 10th rank mage. After that, they could raise their rank by earning achievement points through guilds and associations. But since most people chase money and fame, the official certification still matters far more. It was amazing that Ryan's brother Ree was taking the test at only 18. Ryan just said geniuses are different, especially when their family backs them all the way. His sister didn't tease him about it. Instead, she told him to stay strong, patted his head, and said she was going to make dinner herself since seafood had arrived from the king's palace. Before leaving, she smiled at our hero, said it was nice meeting him, and asked if they would see each other again. He was completely taken by her and started wondering the same thing. The problem was that he was leaving the mansion tomorrow. Then he asked Ryan if his sister had a boyfriend. He instantly tried to cover it up, saying it didn't matter, and he was only curious. then begged his friend to forget he asked, but Rian was already grinning. He took off at once while our hero dropped to his knees, begging him to stop. Our hero chased after him down the hall, thinking Rian had looked depressed a second ago, and now he was full of energy again. Rian ran to the stairs and shouted through the whole mansion, asking if his sister had a boyfriend. Sharon immediately tried to shut him up. The servants were left confused, trying to figure out what they were yelling about. His sister, though, calmly told everyone not to mind them. She said they were just kids messing around, then told the staff to prepare the fish and head to the kitchen, but someone else had been watching the whole scene. A strange man asked whether Rian had any guests scheduled and who the young boy was. He was told no visit had been planned, which made it even stranger. The chief butler said he remembered the boy, and Timoran ordered that he be brought to the office. Later, Rian was out in the woods training. He said he'd only practiced for 10 minutes. His teacher was glad to see him training again, especially after such a long break. The last time Rian had lost interest almost right away. The teacher guessed that if Rian got into the palace, his attitude towards studying would change. The only real issue was his scheme. Then, while Rian was distracted, the butler rushed over and told him to return to the palace. Rian asked who wanted him. If it was his sister, she could do whatever she wanted. But the butler said his sister sent him with urgent news. His temporary butler, Chiron, was in danger. He might be killed. Rian nearly choked on his water. He couldn't understand it. Chiron was supposed to leave today. The young butler only knew that Chief Butler Lewis had sent a report to the family head, and the mistress said it all had to do with Rian. Sharon changed clothes right away and prepared to head back to the mansion. His master stopped Rian and asked what was serious enough to make him rush off like that. Rian didn't hide anything. He said his friend Sharon, the butler, had likely been discovered by his father. He told his teacher his father might forgive it if someone spoke for him and promised to come back and keep training later. His master refused. By then, Chiron was already in the hall, kneeling before the head of the family, who declared that he would be executed. No one there understood how things had gone this far. Still, Timoran pied him. He should have known there was a line he could never cross. His sister tried to speak, but their father shut her down. Too many servants, and even the chief butler's report said the boy had acted too freely around Rian. So the family head asked Chiron if he had read the contract. If he had, then he shouldn't object. Still, was there anything he wanted to say? Chiron lifted his head and asked one thing. If he was the young master's friend, what would happen to Rian? The servants stared at him in shock. Why wasn't he begging for mercy? Even the sister was stunned in a moment like this. He was worried about Rian. The chief butler hated that answer. He called Chiron a fool like all commoners and asked what could possibly happen to a noble for associating with him. But Shireen stayed calm. He said it plainly. Rian was his friend. They had been friends for a year, and that wouldn't change. The family head couldn't understand why he was so calm and took it as disrespect toward the Ogent family. He ordered the chief butler to deal with Sharon quietly and make sure no one else learned what happened. His daughter tried to object, but he cut her off. Sharon had confessed, and the matter was settled. He made it clear that the choice was final. There was no turning back. A lot of the butlers wanted to help Sharon, but they knew they couldn't step into noble affairs. This house was their whole life, and to protect it, even small conflict had to be removed. It may have seemed cruel now, but they believed people would one day understand the choice. Then Rian burst into the hall. He shouted that he wouldn't allow this and demanded to know who gave permission to kill his friend. The head of the family answered that he did. Rian fired back, asking what Sharon had even done. They had only just become friends. His father said, death doesn't require a crime. Rian still didn't understand how harsh noble life was. While the family handled ugly matters like this, he got to enjoy the comfort of being born noble. Rian answered that privilege meant nothing if he had to throw away his friends for it. His father called him childish. Friendship with a noble, he said, is supposed to be equal. So did Rian really believe Sharon saw him as a true equal? On what basis? Plenty of people want to use nobles for their own gain. Rian was sure Shireen would never do that. So his father gave him one condition. Prove that he and Shireen were really friends. Rian froze. If he failed here, it was over. He couldn't prove someone's heart by just blurting out words. If he were Chiron, maybe he could cut through his father's logic easily. But he wasn't. Then he remembered the look Chiron gave him when they fought, and the lesson that the best answer sometimes comes from watching first. So Rian studied the room and started piecing everything together. In front of him wasn't just his father. This was the second-ass noble, head of House Ogent of the Black-Haired clan, a certified fourth-class knight. That's when Rian understood this wasn't only a fight between father and son. It was a duel, and in that moment, he reached for his sword. 30 minutes earlier, Ryan had begged his teacher to let him go because his friend might be killed. His master asked if he meant the boy from the library. Then the teacher said the boy was only a commoner. Rian was stunned. He never expected his master to think the same way as the others. After all, they were the ones who said that crossing swords with someone could lead to real friendship. His teacher then asked what mattered most to aristocrats. The answer was simple. Remove anything that harms the family's name. Did Rian really think he mattered as a friend when in their eyes he was worth less than a bug? His master reminded him how much pressure nobles live under and told him not to ask him to solve this problem. But Rian couldn't stand aside. He was the one who asked Sharon to be friends. And more than that, he didn't want to be a coward. His master saw how serious he was. He knew his student was honest, even naive. But feelings alone would never make him a great swordsman. That was exactly why he believed in him. So he held out his sword and told Rian to take it. He would let him go. But if Rian wasn't ready, he shouldn't take another step. Ryan accepted and said he would never forget this. His teacher left him with one final thought. Abandoning a friend is like abandoning part of yourself. Now Ryan knew this was a sword fight and his own life could be on the line. He gave a short laugh. His father had almost cornered him again. But if his father wanted proof, Rian had only one answer. Believing Shuran was his friend was proof enough. The family had said this wasn't about money. Noble honor was already sinking, and he was willing to cast off even his own son to keep the family from falling further. Everyone was stunned by those words. Rian bowed and said that if protecting his friend meant leaving the family, he would accept it. His father told him to raise his sword. If Shiran truly was his friend, then he should be ready to risk his life. Rian slowly drew the blade. That shook his father. He never imagined his son would stand with a sword in hand before him. But Rian said he wasn't aiming it at him. He was showing his resolve. His father still couldn't understand it. His younger son didn't even fit in with other nobles. Yet instead of staying among equals, he kept someone lower by his side, as if to feel better about himself. Rian said his father was wrong again. Sharon was the better person between them. All Rian wanted was for his friend to shine even brighter. The family head pointed at Sharon and demanded to know what he had done to make his son act like this. How had he convinced him to become friends? Sharon tried to answer that he had done nothing, but Rian cut in and told him not to say a word. He said he would protect him. Sharon told him to calm down. This was his burden to carry. When Rian first asked to be friends, Sharon had known a day like this might come. A choice between friendship and his life. Even if he died here, he said he would never regret being friends with someone like Rian. The words hit so hard that even Rian started crying. He answered that this was exactly what he wanted to say. Banishment or not, they would still be friends. Everyone watching was reminded that no matter their title, they were still people with real feelings. A true friend is someone who never turns away, and everyone either has a friend like that or wishes they did. Then the family's grandfather arrived. He barked at them for putting on such a scene, then laughed at how wild young people could be. His sister relaxed at once. Sure, things would be okay now. The family head had expected him later, but the old man had come early after his companion ran off with a young maid. Sharon could hardly believe it. This was General Torma himself, a third-degree swordsman and Rian's grandfather. He took his seat and remarked that the hall was just as noisy as ever, adding that youth really is the best time of life. The family head looked completely thrown off now. He insisted nothing was wrong. This issue had already dragged the family's image through the mud. But Grandfather Ray said not to rush. He had watched everything from behind the scenes, and since so many people clearly had something to say, they should hear them out. The first to speak was the eldest daughter, Reina. She said that even though she had only met Sharon yesterday, she could tell he was bright and talented. On top of that, he had followed every rule of the contract and was supposed to leave today anyway. With all that in mind, it was hard to claim Sharon had evil intentions toward Rian. So, in her view, his actions were not some stain on the family's honor or name. After hearing his granddaughter, Grandfather turned to his other grandson, restarted by saying he didn't like the boy, and that made his father happy for a second. Then he added that it didn't matter. His father was stunned and asked what he meant. Made it clear even if he disliked him, he had no right to choose his brother's friends. He just wanted this whole mess over with so he could finally leave for the royal palace. Grandfather heard him out, joked that this house was more fun than his own, and moved on. Next, he called on the one person who knew our hero better than most, Timoran, the deputy butler. He understood servants usually aren't allowed to share opinions since they only carry out their master's orders. Still, Timoran said Sharon had done every task perfectly and even finished 6 months early. The chief butler got angry, but Grandfather cut in and asked if he knew about the boy's friendship. Timoran said he only knew Sharon spent a lot of time with the young master. He didn't know they were friends, but he added that if Shireen were just some ordinary child, he never could have sorted 10,000 books. By then, everyone could feel the tension easing. The only one still pushing for punishment was Sharon's father. That's when grandfather said he couldn't allow it. His granddaughter looked confused, but the father was suddenly pleased. Grandfather explained that yes, Sharon and Ryan were true friends, but this still had to end. If it kept going, rumors would spread, and their enemies could use that as a weakness. Everyone in the family held an important place in the kingdom. Even Ree had a certification test ahead of him. Grandfather said a family this big carried heavy burdens. He called Chiron a smart boy and said he should understand. Then he looked straight at his grandson. He could tell Ryan was serious. Still, grandfather said he didn't yet understand how much weight came with countless lives, depending on a family like this. Then he asked Chiron what he thought. He knew our hero had taught Ryan what real friendship was, but could he end it here? Chiron answered that he couldn't. That shocked everyone. Chiron went on. If he truly became a burden to Ryan, then he would never see him again. But that still wouldn't stop him from calling Ryan his friend. They were friends, and with that in mind, he would obey whatever they decided. Ryan was hurting. Even if Chiron survived, losing him would still break him. Deep down, he knew leaving his friend would be like losing part of himself, so he refused to accept it. He drew his sword, and his sister yelled for him to stop. Too late. He drove the blade into the floor and declared that he, Ryan Ogent, third son of the Ogent family, would become Chiron's sword from this day on. His father shouted that his son was a complete idiot. The oath of knighthood dated all the way back to the founding of the kingdom of Tormia during an age when nations fought endlessly over land. Athelphus I, the strongest among them, united those lands and built Tormia. But the new kingdom still had to deal with powerful neighboring states. So defeated kings were allowed to keep ruling their territories. And from that came the famous knight's oath. In exchange for swearing to serve only one lord as that lord's sword, they were granted noble status. That was how the nobility began. So taking this oath was no small thing. Everyone was stunned. Ryan, though, looked satisfied. Now no one could make him take it back. Our hero rushed over and asked what he had just done. Grandfather stayed serious. If Ryan truly meant he would be Chiron's sword, then what exactly was it about our hero that inspired that kind of loyalty? What made Chiron shine so brightly in Ryan's eyes? Ryan smiled and answered that a sword doesn't judge, it protects. Grandfather burst out laughing and said that maybe fools need to go that far if they want to grow. Then he smirked and added that Ryan talks big, but his sword skills are awful, so he almost felt bad for Chiron getting stuck with him. At last, Grandfather stood and said enough. What was done was done. Even if Ryan wasn't the finest sword, Grandfather said he would never turn that blade on Chiron. He asked our hero to look after his grandson, and Chiron thanked him for accepting this. Grandfather added that now that the two were bound like this, he couldn't just let it pass. He ordered the chief butler to bring Chiron's parents to the mansion. Our hero said that really wasn't necessary. Ryan told him he hadn't done it just because they were friends. Unlike his brother, he said he knew how to recognize someone who draws people in. That was why he was willing to bet his life on a person like our hero. Chiron turned red. Those huge words again. Feeling the pressure, he muttered that Ryan would need to train a lot harder if he planned to protect him. While they were talking, Ryan's sister came in and asked if it was true her brother had lost a duel. Then she noticed him on the floor. Ryan barked at her to leave, too. But our hero said she had helped him a lot this time. Ryan asked what their father and grandfather were doing now. She said things were complicated because of the knight's oath, and the adults were trying to figure out what to do next. Still, their father wanted to send both of them to the Kaizen Swordsmanship Academy, since Ryan had already said our hero had talent with a sword. Sharon was shocked, but she said he was practically family now, and she'd already told them about his ability. It seemed the whole family wanted Sharon to outdo Ryan. Ryan yelled that he was being sent to school right when he could have spent all day playing with Sharon. While his sister hid him for that, he blurted out that Chiron would become a mage because he had awakened the spirit state. She froze, then started thinking hard. Had her brother really sworn himself to a future mage? Wouldn't that make a swordsman look weaker than a wizard? Ryan's only answer was to tell her to get out. Then it clicked for her. During their last fight, our hero had used the spirit zone. That was why he won. He could read and predict every attack. She praised that trick highly, saying even she never would have expected it. Our hero wondered how that was possible, and she told him he was amazing. She'd learned at school that the stronger your focus, the stronger your spirit zone, and reaching that level while holding a sword was incredible. Sharon just stood there confused. Both Ajans could tell that if our hero stayed this awkward, he'd never get a girlfriend. So his sister broke the silence and said she'd talk to grandfather. After all, Sharon's future now depended a lot on whether Ryan would attend sword school. Ryan jumped up and asked what would happen to his old teacher. His sister replied that Master Keat already knew everything. Because of that, he had decided to end Ryan's training contract tomorrow and give his farewell speech in the morning. Ryan couldn't believe it. For all he knew, the teacher might already be gone. Just then, The butler entered and announced that the family had arrived and were waiting in the hall. The head of the house added that our hero could go see them now if he wanted. Sharon lit up and rushed off at once. He moved so fast the butlers on the stairs begged him to slow down. He barely heard them and even asked them not to speak to him like some noble since he was still just a peasant. They replied that they weren't allowed to do that and could be punished for it. Sharon only smiled and said he wouldn't tell anyone. He opened the waiting room door, saw his family, and ran straight into their arms. Looking at them closely, he noticed how thin they seemed. They must have spent the whole night worried he wouldn't come home alive. His mother, crying, insisted that she and his father had been fine and had plenty to eat. Then his father asked why he hadn't come home sooner if his work was already finished. Was the family keeping him there on purpose? Chiron quickly said it wasn't like that at all. They had simply offered him a great chance. When his parents didn't understand, he told them everything that had happened. They were stunned. Just from working in a library, their son had found a friend who gave him a knight's oath. But his father still needed to hear it clearly. Was this really true or some kind of terrible joke? Was someone mocking them? Chiron firmly said no. Every word was true. His father immediately grabbed him in a crushing hug, saying he knew no one stayed the same after entering a noble house. At that moment, the head of the Ogent family, Biskov, arrived. Ryan and Rihanna stood behind him. Chiron's parents could hardly believe their eyes. They quickly stood and bowed, asking why someone so important was treating them this way. Biskov asked if Chiron had already explained everything. That was when his parents finally understood. Everything their son said was true. Even sitting before a table full of rich food, they were still dazed. Chiron and LT, Unk and GT, his father didn't even know what a knight's oath really meant. Still, he couldn't believe nobles would show this much kindness to commoners, so he asked again over tea. He wanted to know if it was really true that the young lord had bowed to his son because the whole thing felt unreal. Biskov confirmed it. He said, the Ogent family follows a strict warrior code, and a knight's oath cannot be ignored. If they look down on Chiron's family just because of class, Ryan's honor will be stained too. That's why everyone in the house would keep treating them with respect. He asked them not to feel uneasy and promised they would not turn their backs on Chiron. From the side, the grandfather muttered that he never thought he'd hear words like this from his own son. That only made Chiron respect the Ogent family more. Taking in a peasant was already a lot, but Biskov chose honor over pride and never tried to scare anyone. Then Biskov cut to the real point. Chiron can already use the state of the soul. He explained that this power doesn't come from effort alone. You have to be born with that gift. And since Chiron wants to become a mage, Biskov said he would help him get an unofficial magic license as soon as possible. He even thought Ulfus Magic Academy, one of the kingdom's top 5 schools, would suit him. He hadn't expected Chiron to go that far, but with his new standing, refusing would be foolish. To meet the Ogent standards, he should attend. The grandfather, clearly tense, asked what that would mean for a lumberjack's son. The answer was simple. If he finished there, he could become a wizard. Chiron's father was stunned, but Chiron could only think about the academy. There was still one huge problem. Magic schools were for the elite. Commoners simply didn't get in. So Ryan's grandfather gave the only answer they had. Adopt Chiron. His father froze, and they explained this was the only solution the family had found. After discussing it together, they handed Chiron's parents a document and said a young cousin in their family had no children. If Chiron's name was added there, the issue would disappear. They also made it clear they were not trying to take him away. It would only exist on paper, but legally that was the only way for Chiron to become a noble. His father could hardly process it. A boy from their family becoming a noble sounded impossible. Yet, accepting it also felt like losing their son. He looked at Chiron silently, asking what he should do, but Chiron had already made up his mind. He took his father's hand and said he could not become another man's adopted son. Hope filled his father's eyes, but Ryan's older sister tried to calm him. She said it would only be paperwork, nothing more, and Chiron could still reach his dream. Even the grandfather warned that almost no one in the world gets a chance like this. But Chiron didn't budge. He said if becoming a mage meant changing fathers, then he would rather stay a peasant. The grandfather snapped that commoners aren't accepted into magic meets. But Chiron answered that if that was the price, then he simply wouldn't go. The old man rose and shouted Chiron's name, asking why he was being so stubborn when success always demands sacrifice. If he couldn't give this up, then was his dream really that important? Chiron answered that if that was true, then the dream itself didn't matter. It came from his parents. They were the roots that taught him to read, and his dream was just the fruit that grew from what they gave him. Everything he had began with them. One chance in front of him could never outweigh all the chances his family had already given him. Giving them up would be like drying out and dying. He was thankful for the offer, but the only parents he had were the two standing beside him. The whole room fell silent. The grandfather couldn't tell if this came from morals, guilt, or something else. Then Chiron's father suddenly said they should go ahead and adopt him. The grandfather objected at once, saying Chiron's own feelings had to come first. But then Chiron's father said something nobody expected. Chiron was not his real son by blood. His mother was shaken that he said it out loud. And Chiron was confused too. Vincent went on. He said he and his wife had never been able to have a child. And then one day, Chiron came into their lives. He always believed the boy must have been born to nobles. A child that fine didn't belong to a man like him. But joining another family wouldn't erase where he came from. Biskov questioned it for a moment, but thinking back, everyone knew Chiron never really looked like the son of woodcutters. Still, hearing it out loud sounded almost like a rejection. Chiron asked how his father could say something like that without talking to him or the rest of the family first. Vincent replied that now his son was grown, he deserved to know. But Chiron asked if his father really thought he had known. He said he never asked because that was how one person could still have two true parents. But now his father was asking him to have 6. Vincent broke down, sweating and crying because he only wanted Chiron to keep chasing his dream. Chiron said he wasn't giving up on it. He just wanted his father to think about how it would feel to be abandoned by his parents twice. Vincent pulled him into a hug and begged forgiveness, swearing he would never let that happen. He promised he would never leave his son and asked Chiron to forgive such a foolish father. Everyone there understood that parents often hurt their children while trying to help them. Raising a child without support hurts parents, too. After watching all this, Biskov finally spoke. He said Alphea's Magic Academy had a few special arrangements, and maybe its headmaster would agree to one. The grandfather couldn't imagine a man like that agreeing to anything. So he asked why Alphys would ever owe him a favor. Biskov just smiled and said that for a man who could twist even his own ears, his son was proof enough. 3 days later, while Ryan was preparing to leave for fencing school, the Ogent family let Chiron's family stay in their home for a while. Even after apologizing to Chiron, his father kept wondering how long he could keep his courage up. This time, there was one good thing, though. Chiron and Ryan now had plenty of time together. But after those 3 days, Ryan still had to leave. He complained through tears about being shoved into a carriage and sent off to fencing school, wondering why he couldn't just wait and enroll later like Chiron might. Chiron reminded him they still didn't know if he would get in. He promised to write every day and said they could meet during breaks. Ryan placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and said Chiron had to become a mage because he would become the strongest knight, the sword that would protect him. He was getting carried away when his sister smacked him. She told Ryan to focus on his studies because she worried about him, then told Chiron to spend time with his family since their grandfather would handle the rest. Sharon thanked her with a bow, and she thought to herself what a strange and special child he was. At first, she had seen him like a little brother, but he was far more thoughtful than that. Even in a painful moment like this, he wouldn't betray what he believed. So, she told him to keep trying. He needed to become a mage and help watch over her brother, too. Then Sharon got into the carriage with his family. On the way, he was told that if he entered the Magic Academy, he would have to hide the truth from everyone. He passed that same warning on to his friend. The meeting between Rihanna Ogent and Chiron Aryan, 2 fierce young hearts, would later be remembered as the start of an event that shook their whole world. Then the story shifts to Alphea's Magic Academy. Grandfather Ogenta sat with his tea and asked what was wrong since the man across from him had been thinking in silence for half an hour. It was the old man we met long ago. He said that even after 50 years of friendship, he still couldn't accept this request. He'd already suffered enough because of Ogenta in their younger days, and he wasn't about to bend the rules now. Special agreements weren't made to rescue noble plans. Many apply every year, and even those exceptions have strict conditions. Ogen thought his old friend was being stubborn on purpose, making him wait, even though he clearly already had an answer. So, he finally said, "Our hero wasn't an ordinary kid at all," and that caught the headman's interest. With his arms crossed, the headmaster said he hadn't asked to meet just some unusual boy. He wanted to hear about his youngest grandson's friend, a boy who must be truly special. Seeing our hero made him think of himself when he was young. Still, he asked what the issue was. If the boy was that gifted, why wasn't he applying on his own? There had to be a problem. Ogenet went quiet, then admitted there was one, and it was a big one. The boy wasn't a noble. That instantly changed the headmaster's face. He stared at Ogent and asked if this was the blonde boy with blue eyes. From Ogent's point of view, all his thoughts about our hero came rushing back. He had first seen him as a clever kid who knew how to sway adults. But when Ogen offered to raise his status, the boy refused. Ogen even laughed, asking what kind of person would turn down the chance to become a noble. But the headmaster understood right away. Our hero was someone who truly grasped cause and effect. Ogent knew most people never understood that, and that was why they lost their way. New chances can come, But once someone throws away their beliefs, they can lose everything. Our hero would never abandon what he believed was right, and that reminded them of their younger days. The headmaster thought people like that are dangerous in a way. Some will praise their convictions, while others will hate them for the same reason. He fell silent for a moment, remembering the past. Then Owen asked if that meant he still hadn't forgiven himself. He tried to comfort him, too. After guiding so many talented students, wasn't it time to let that guilt go? But the headmaster said Ogent was right, even if he was arrogant. He taught children so they would never become like him. So if our hero really resembled him, there was no promise he wouldn't end up on the same terrible road. Owen answered that his friend Alphys had been a once-in-a-century genius. People called him the light of the Milch family. But one wrong step nearly ruined his life. He managed to come back from it, though Ogent still couldn't believe that man had ended up as an old headmaster out here. The headmaster shot back that he never expected Ogent to start helping the heavens either and make himself look like an official third-rate fool. He even joked that he was worried for the future of the kingdom of Tormia. The headmaster laughed, and Ogent asked if this might really be fate, since even he knew the boy. After all, the child who had vanished 4 years ago had come back. The headmaster said he didn't believe in fate, but it was true that the boy's talent had been blocked by his birth and pushed onto a different path for 4 years. And now that same boy was standing right in front of him. If that wasn't fate, what was? At last, the headmaster turned to Ogent and said he would accept Shireen. Then spring came 3 months later. Now 17, our hero was getting into the carriage and saying goodbye to his family. He asked how he looked, and everyone seemed happy with him. Then his father coughed and asked if he hadn't forgotten something. Sharon, now 17, joked that he wasn't going to kiss him, but his father was serious. When Sharon still wouldn't do it, his father kissed him on the forehead and told him he'd do great. He said it because he believed in him. Sharon then asked if everything at home would really be okay, since the family head had offered to find him a house in the city. But his father was proud to be a hunter and said he'd manage in the mountains. He'd already accepted that even if he refused Ogent family support, they'd force help on them anyway. Sharon had thought getting into